Today, I want to compare and contrast Vancouver, Washington versus Seattle, Washington. This is a topic that I feel like I can speak to since I did live up in Seattle for 8 years. However, we moved down to Vancouver in 2012, so it has been a while. If you have narrowed it down so you know you want to move to Washington State and you're considering these two places, then hang around for this video. Like always, I try to keep these videos relatively short so you don't have to commit to 30 minutes of listening to me ramble. I'm happy to ramble at length if you want to have a call and have a chat. Thank you for watching. I make a new video every week on life and real estate in Southwest Washington. I was raised in 𝐬𝐨𝐬. I have lived here for most of my life, and I love helping others learn about and explore this special place. I have been selling homes in Clark County since 2014, and I would love to talk to you about your home search if you are ready to have that conversation. Reach out anytime. My phone number, my email are in the header up above, and they're also in the description down below, and I think you have to click that little ... more button. I post a new video every week, so don't forget to subscribe and turn the bell on for notifications so that you don't miss a video. Obviously, most of my conversations are with people considering a move to Vancouver, to Southwest Washington, so like Vancouver, 𝐬𝐴𝐬, Ridgefield, Battleground, Hawkinson, one of those areas. So what draws them to Vancouver? A big one is proximity to Portland for work and travel, being able to get to the Portland airport within like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I mean, honestly, some of my more rural properties that I've sold, it's still like 30, 35 minutes to the airport. And that's pretty good to get to like a major international airport. So a lot of people, they are drawn to Vancouver because they have such quick access to an international airport, and they can still be in Washington where you do not have income tax, and obviously like the setting is super beautiful. A lot of people come to Vancouver because of the access to the Oregon coast. You have Seaside, Newport, Astoria, 𝐦𝐤𝐤𝐞, Long Beach. To be able to drive 2 hours to get to the coast is pretty awesome. The Oregon coast is one of the most beautiful places in the world. If you have not driven or visited the Oregon coast, I highly recommend it. I have been out to Long Beach, Washington a bunch. I've done a video on Long Beach before. I'll link that above. And it's like a very usable beach. It's like a long sandy beach. So to be able to get out there within 2 hours is pretty awesome. Also, some people surf. They want to go surfing on the Washington or Oregon coast. That's not for me, but some people love to do that. Also, fisher people love being able to access the coast to go fishing. Let's see, what else? Just the beauty of the gorge, hiking, boating on the river, windsurfing, fishing, skiing, snowshoeing. The access to the outdoors is top notch. The Columbia River Gorge is a national scenic area. It is beautiful. And anytime you drive down Highway 14 or 84, you see tons of people out on the river enjoying it. I love watching kiteboarders. I would be too scared to ever try that, but it's really fun to watch, and like good for them for being outside and doing it. And obviously fishing on the river. And then Mount Hood is really not that far away either. So you have access to the coast, you have the river to play on, and you have Mount Hood for skiing, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, etc. within 2 hours as well. Some people have narrowed it down, like they want to come to the Northwest, they look at Portland, and they choose Vancouver because it does have a smaller town feel than Portland or Seattle, but you're still like very close to big city living, so you can get down into downtown Portland, some of the more like big cultural events, or if you want to go see a play or a big concert, things like that. Vancouver also has a lower cost of living than Seattle. The average home price in Vancouver is currently $525,000 versus Seattle's average home price is $935,000. So obviously the barrier to entry is a lot higher in Seattle, and that was actually one of the reasons why my husband and I decided to move down to Vancouver in 2012, because we knew we were starting a family, and just home prices were already so much higher in Seattle that it was like, okay, well, families in Vancouver, home prices are less, job market is good, let's just go do that. Vancouver also has less traffic than larger metro areas. I have said this in lots of videos. I do my best to not go into Portland because I hate traffic. So in Vancouver, sometimes it gets backed up just due to congestion. There's just like a lot of people out at like 5 or 5:30 getting home from work. But for the most part, the only thing that slows you down is stoplights. So that's kind of good to know. Population-wise, the population of Vancouver is 192,000 and Seattle's population is 733,000. So the population of all of Clark County is 481,000. A lot of people, they just want to be part of a smaller town. They don't really want that like big city feel. Vancouver also draws people in because the suburbs have great schools. Like just Google Camas School District, Hawkinson School District is up there too. The weather in these two areas is not all that different. Both Seattle and Vancouver have a fairly mild climate. It doesn't get too crazy hot or too crazy cold. Seattle gets slightly more days of rain per year, but less volume of rain, barely. It's just more drizzly in Seattle, but that doesn't make Vancouver not drizzly. It can still be very drizzly in Vancouver. Seattle has more days of rain, but they also have an average of more days of sun per year too. Temperature-wise, they are also pretty neck and neck. It gets slightly colder in Vancouver. Each winter, it gets slightly colder in Vancouver, and in the summer, it gets slightly hotter in Vancouver. Anecdotally, we moved from Seattle to Vancouver in 2012, and we thought there was more sun in Vancouver than Seattle and less rain. That was just our own opinion. That wasn't based on like actual taking data points every day. So according to the stats, we were wrong, but honestly, that means the weather is probably not different enough between the two places to make a difference. So what about living up in Seattle? I loved the location, the natural beauty. There are so many things to do in Seattle. Downtown Pioneer Square was starting to get a little sketchy. It was definitely getting worse, and I haven't been back lately to compare, but from what I hear, it hasn't really gotten better. What I loved about Seattle is there are so many great areas of Seattle. I was particularly fond of Wallingford, Green Lake, and Ballard, and West Seattle also. They have a lot of cute shops and restaurants, and they have their own little like neighborhood vibe, which is fun. If you haven't been to Seattle, Seattle is surrounded by mountains and water. It is incredibly gorgeous and also very hard to get lost there, as there are so many enormous natural landmarks. So if you are downtown, you don't know what direction you're facing, you're like, well, the sound is over here, and there's Mount Rainier, so it's like pretty easy to orient yourself. My husband always jokes that once we moved to Vancouver, he's like, I never know where I am, because if the mountain's not out, talking about Mount Hood, like you don't have like a major geographical landmark orienting yourself, right? Other than the river, obviously. In Seattle, you have the Puget Sound, the Olympic Mountains, Lake Union, Lake Washington, Mount Rainier. You get the picture. It is a gorgeous place. As I mentioned, it's a much larger area population-wise, and therefore it does have more traffic. My in-laws were recently up there visiting my brother-in-law, and they came away with a couple of stories that were really pretty bad about traffic. One time they were staying in like Renton Auburn area, and they tried to go to a movie. Well, they did go to a movie, but then the traffic on the way back from the movie, what should have been like a 20 to 30 minute drive, ended up being an hour and a half ride in the car to get home from a movie. And when they were picked up from the airport, again, it was like an hour of waiting in the line at the airport to pick them up, which on a daily basis, like I couldn't do that. That would drive me crazy. And traffic can be bad in Portland, but like not that bad. So I think that there's just been so many people moving to Seattle. Seattle's job market is really strong. They've got Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft. Like they are drawing in a ton of like professionals, and with that comes more people, more cars, more traffic. The homeless problem in Seattle is something to look into and consider if that might be an issue for you. There's a great documentary called Seattle is Dying that I watched. It was kind of sad to watch. You might want to look into that situation before making the leap and buying a house in Seattle. I also just saw a headline about homeless encampments this summer, like being at war with each other. So that's a little concerning. Washington State is second only to California for the highest rate of homelessness, and Seattle is behind only Los Angeles and New York City. Cost of living is higher, but it seems like schools around Seattle rank higher than schools down here in Southwest Washington. I have found a list of the top 12 school districts in Washington State, and only one is in Southwest Washington. Most of them are up in the Seattle area. Some are in Tacoma, Olympia, and Eastern Washington. If you are interested in private schooling your kids, it's going to cost you less down in Vancouver than up in Seattle. In Vancouver, it's about $10,000 to $15,000 per year to put a kid in private school, and it averages closer to $20,000 up in Seattle. As I just mentioned, like there's a better job market up in Seattle. So a major pro for Seattle is a job market. Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, there's tons of big tech companies. And then obviously when you have these giant big tech companies, I think there's more jobs created for like supplemental industries, like services and everything else. Something to keep in mind is on the cons list for Seattle is, it's called the Seattle freeze. So this is not related to the weather. This is just when you move into Seattle it can be a little harder to make friends with people who are from Seattle. It seems like there's this waiting period before they accept you. Like, are you going to stick around? Can you handle the weather? And so it's kind of like getting the cold shoulder. Like, someone might be like really nice up front and like polite, not mean, but also they're like not super welcoming. But I would say that's probably more so people who are like living in Seattle, from Seattle, and less, you know, if you're moving in, like there's gonna be other people who are new who will also be friendly. So it might take longer to get to know people who are like actually from Seattle than to get to know people who are also transplants from other places. Culture and art-wise, Seattle wins over Vancouver. Seattle is the birthplace of grunge. Downtown Seattle is packed with art museums and art installations, bookstores, theaters, and live music. If you are looking for an artsy community, then Seattle would be more of a place for you, unless you are drawn to that cost of living in Vancouver and can tolerate crossing the bridge to Portland to get some of the art vibes. All right, that's all I have for you today on my like pros and cons list, comparing and contrasting Seattle and Vancouver. So let me know if you have any questions, or if you have any comments or feedback for me, or insights. If you have lived in both of these places, put them down below in the comments. And obviously, if you are interested in talking about what it's like living in Vancouver, give me a call. And if you are thinking about moving to Seattle, I do have a couple of agents out there that I would highly recommend that I've worked with before. So I hope you have a great day, and I will be back next week.